Oh, look at God. Look at God. Look at God. Look at God. Welcome home, Ricky.
Hello, and welcome to a new edition of Education is the Best Medicine. Thanks for watching and listening, and I want to thank everyone for a great new year. Want to say thank you to all the folks that have kind of supported us on Facebook Live and throughout the community, and we'll be on Instagram pretty soon. Speaking of animology, want to say a special thank you to the community. And I think we always think that community public access is your best bet. And want to just say again, Believe Radio. It's a 24-hour news and gospel channel that allows us to do what we do here. Have a special guest today, and we're going to be intersecting. And at the end of the show, we're going to do a breathing exercise for about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Going to close the show out in that fashion because this is about healing and about where we're at. This is Dr. Cathia Walters. Cathia said, well, Walters.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Walters is doctor. Your what do you like prefer, and what your just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Cathia Walters with the Walters Wellness Group in Pinot. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, working with primarily adults, couples here in the Bay Area.
And I kind of wanted to bring her on. We met at our hairdressers. Right. I want to thank Makita for being and doing what she did, because she brings hope about a whole group of diverse people that have locked their hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling Doc, I said, look here, I just came and get an appointment and still didn't get the appointment. So that's cool. Doc, I'm going to intersperse this with kind of a discussion around the medical community. And I understand, I want people to pull up her website, www.walterswellnessgroup.com. It's a great website, and it gets you and introduces you to some of the things that she's doing around not only mental health, but spiritual and cultural health, and as well as the mind-body experience and the things that she does. Doc, tell us a little bit about the mind-body experience and how you incorporate it into your practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the things I do, or my firm belief, is that we have to look at things from a holistic perspective. And I do holistic with a W, meaning the whole body. So from the crown of her head, right, to the soles of her feet. So we have to look at things from a spiritual perspective. We have to look at things from our physical body. We have to look at the emotional and the mental health piece. Because without one, the other is not going to function properly. And so some of the ways I deal with that is through movements, right? So with my groups and classes that I offer around, I work a lot with trauma and traumatic experiences, grief, loss, in the various forms that they come in. And so what I've found over the years is that incorporated movement into the work helps a lot to bring people down, bring their arousal levels down, or to activate them so that they're not in that depressed state that they, sometimes we live in. So physical, we look at things with a lot of breathing work, breath work. So meditation, mindfulness practices, grounding skills. We look at things from even include financial wealth in your health. So how all those elements that are in our lives, how they intersect to affect our physical well-being. So, we run to our primary care because we're having a stomach ache or a backache or headaches. What are some of the things that we can do differently in our lives? Can we just choose to slow down? Can we take a breath? Can we practice compassion for ourselves, which is where a lot of us struggle? is that we're not very kind to ourselves. And so when I think mind, body, spirit, I'm looking at it from that holistic perspective and what are the choices that we're making and how are those choices impacting and impeding our growth, right? Whether it's for spiritual growth or financial growth or emotional or physical growth. Again, because they're all one big loop. And if we're able to shift one, you'd be amazed how the others start to shift, in line with where we're headed.
Okay. And I was thinking, we taught a show on gratitude and being grateful. And I went through the show about 105 things you need to be thankful for in life. And this kind of discussion brings us to a discussion around historically the first physician in Hotep. And folks don't know him. They need to look about him because it gives us our first African-American physician. And I think that we need to understand that connection. And Hotep was he was a chancellor of the Pharaoh Dashir, and he's one of the earliest figures recorded to hold multiple titles and expertise. Now, the parallel to that is African-American women were the same thing. They just weren't being known. They just weren't acknowledged. They were the queens. They were the empresses. They were the spiritual women. So not to negate male history, we must always understand there's a secondary side to that history, which is an African woman. And he's kind of credited with being an architect as well as physician. Of course, again, read about him, do your homework. One of the things about what we're doing today is trying to get folks scheduled into the new year to 2024 with a better discussion and attitude and some ways we can affect some not only physical, mental, but spiritual change in our lives. And I want to give a special thank you to the physicians that have been very important to me, Dr. Bonner, Dr. Slaughter, Dr. Wafer, Dr. Green, Dr. Brown, Dr. Malley, Dr. Goodrich, Dr. Scott. And I also want to give a special shout out, and I'm going to reflect this back on you, Doc. Dr. Rebecca Lee was the first African-American physician. She got her degree in 1864. And I think one of the issues that I want to bring up about the discussion is that she, of course, broke barriers like you're doing. And I want to kind of find out from you what it means to break barriers for you as an African-American clinician. And like her, it's a medical profession in a time which both race and gender pose considerable challenges. And how do you address those challenges? And again, vis-a-vis your achievements have paved the way for future generations of African-American women pursuing careers in medicine.
So, in terms of barriers, I think, there's several folks before me, so I don't necessarily want to say that, I broke the barrier, but what I will say that I have been doing differently, I think, and I've been doing this for several years, is the incorporation. I think the whole concept of looking at the mind, at a person from a holistic perspective is fairly new, right? We tend to come from a long line of let's dissect and look at this piece over here and look at this piece over here. And I think there has been a movement, over the past several years to start looking at things as more, let's look at it as a unit, right? And how each piece and how part contributes to how that unit moves. And so I think one of the things I will say in terms of what I'm trying to do differently is, as I mentioned earlier, is to incorporate these different elements. I do things such as, walk-in therapy, because I realize that not everyone is okay just sitting in a room and talking about their traumas or their grief or their lives. And so being able to do things differently, I do stuff like retreats. You mentioned.
Yeah, I saw you had a women's retreat on your website. Yes. And let's be clear, her services will cater to everyone, but she has a special, unique heart place for women and women of color.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, because I do offer services to everyone, but there's a special love, and maybe because, I am a Black woman.
Okay.
So,
hey.
And
okay.
I have.
You have to really That's really deep because some Black women don't want to acknowledge the fact that they are Black women.
I am Black,
You know,
and
and
out.
it's always like,
First and
well,
foremost.
I'm mixed, or my mom was light, and all
Yeah,
that kind of
now,
stuff. Okay.
now I'm first and foremost, I'm a Black woman,
Okay.
right? And I have daughters, I have moms, I have sisters. And one of the things, to what you were saying, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is we often get pushed to the side, as women, and definitely as Black women, right? We caretake a lot. We stand behind and we support, we crawl on all fours to support, and oftentimes at our own expense, right? And so one of the things that I've made very a conscious decision and choice in 2005, I started a Black women's sport group. And that was very consciously done with the idea that self-care never equates selfishness. And that has always been my theme. Back in 2005, self-care never equates selfishness. And if we're going to be movers and shakers, and if we're going to try to support and make changes and affect changes in this world, it has to begin at home, meaning it has to begin with you, with me as an individual, as a Black woman.
I'd like to put this in context too, because if we don't deal with a particular context, then people kind of get it twisted. And so I was looking at some data. Heart disease is the leading cause of death for women in the United States. It kills almost 314,000 women in 2020. That's 1 in 5 every females. Cardiovascular disease kills more than 50,000 Black women annually. Stroke is the leading cause of death among Black women.
Exactly.
And one of the discussions is managing stress levels by finding healthy ways to cope with stress. And not only that, but the other piece that is the mental health piece. I would define any mental illness is defined as a mental behavioral or emotional disorder. AMI can vary in impact, ranging from no impairment to mild, moderate, and severe. Several impairments, injuries with serious mental illness is defined. Here's my discussion too, is that too often Black women are taking care of everybody but themselves. And I'm really specific. I'm talking about African-American women of 16, 19 that deal with this issue around post-traumatic slavery issues. And so I think it's a different issue than just Black women. There are Black women that come to America and don't even believe we were slaves. So I'm very specific about this. And the reason why I think it's important, one of my foundations in primary care is trauma-informed care. But if you don't know you're traumatized, like Malcolm says, you're traumatized and you can't react to the trauma. And so I think one of these is the kind of vehicles we need, like yourself and you at the helm, that understands the souls of women of color to have this kind of discussion. Because definitely, look, 85% of the clinicians are white males. We're only 3% of the population. So that's why I say you're unique within that uniqueness. So, and I want to get this out of, you got to tell me where soul plays in this. We have mind, body, spirit. Now the new concept of holy is soul. How does that play in your matrix of what you're doing? And first of all, I think it's great. I told you that. I texted you that as soon as I read the, I had to have you on. It's just very important as a moving to my first show going to the future. Now we've always talked about all this trauma, all this. Now we're going to talk about how to fix it. You're one of the fix-its. Seriously.
Yeah. So kind of piggybacking on, I want to just go back a little to some of the things you were saying and that I was saying in terms of how we address the whole traumatic, I call them traumatic experiences, right? Some of which, we're born into in utero. We're exposed
that
to
kind of thing, right?
all those ancestral stuff that's been there, the generational traumas that, we're born into, not just as Black folks, but, as Black women, right? A part of that shapes who we are. Yes.
I'm gonna raise my hand because I love you talking. Because you also intersect, because we talk about intergenerational trauma, but people don't understand that impact that what happened to you in 16, 19 is probably still affecting you today. I'm putting my hand down.
Okay. So the whole history, the idea of intergenerational trauma history. First of all, we have to know where we've been to know where we're going, right? We have to understand how trauma works. Trauma works on the bodies. you mentioned heart disease and all those things. We're having 30-year-old, 20-year-olds who are going to bed and not waking up. And by all means, by their primary care, are healthy. And so the question comes for me is like, well, what's happening? In the past month, I've known they're all under 40. They're in their 30s.
Less
At
than
least
30.
3 young women who's supposed to be healthy went to bed and did not wake up. So what's causing that? What's happening there, right? And so when we think about what's going on intergenerationally, what's happening now, how people are taking care of their bodies, and to bring in the mind, body, spirit, and soul, stress kills. It's a silent killer. And until we understand that, and until we learn how to manage, I don't use the word control, I use the word manage. Until we learn how to manage our stressors, until we learn how to manage all these life challenges, right, that are here, that has been here, that will continue to be here, we are going to continue to be that high number, right? Or the highest number in all these heart diseases and stuff.
I agree.
And so understanding the concept that the body keeps scores, right? Bissell van der Kolk was the first one who talked about the fact that our body keeps scores. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Going back to 1619, I wasn't around, right? Yet in my DNA is coded, and the research has shown that our DNA is coded with some of those historical events, those traumatic experiences. Fast forward, we're in 2023, going into 2024. We're having these kids who are dying, and no one can pinpoint what it is. They just had a clean bill of health based on or Western medicine systems, right? But what people are not looking at is how are they navigating, right, those experiences that are unconscious but lives in the body.
Well, the parallel I draw between that is maternal mortality and the fact that young women, and I've talked about on the program ad nauseum last year, that why are young African American women athletic without medical issues, running track, track champions. I'm thinking Terry Bowie. She died in her first trimester of pregnancy. My own experience is that my my granddaughter had a preemie. So we're talking about on one end infant mortality, on the other end preemie, and also the woman being at risk. I think we need to redefine this pregnancy issue as not something that something happens to women. It's something that can cause great devastation in a woman's life. And I don't think the medical community creates that. That's one. Secondly, the issue around heart disease, discussion of structural versus non-structural disease. What we're seeing in the younger generation, there may be a structural component that's not being identified because it's too early. And we don't think that folks less than 30 can have heart attacks or strokes. They can.
They can.
And so we have to reset this whole piece because, for example, in these athletic examinations, they're basic examinations, no echoes, no stress. It's just a guy listens to the heart. Oh, you can go play ball. What happens? He goes play ball and drops dead. So the other piece of that is the emotional, psychological traumas that kind of have warped and changed our structural DNA to where we're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the piece that I think doesn't get addressed a lot, right? Is how our emotions, how we're managing those stressors, right? Yes, we can go and we can get medication for this and that, but are we talking about what's triggering?
Do we have a safe place
Do
to
we
talk
have
about?
a safe place to talk about that?
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things that, and I'll just put a plug in here. That's one of the things I try to offer.
Website?
The website, www.walterswellnessgroup.com.
Okay.
Please check it out, to look at the variety of services. But one of the ways that we do that is taking women away for 9 days, right? You can disconnect.
Why not 20? I'm scared.
Hey,
How about a month?
You know what? Honestly, if people can afford to do that, I'm willing to do that, right?
Okay.
But
all right. 9 days
do,
is the
9 days is the number. So
Okay.
what we do is, we just have them be the queens that they are and they're being catered to, from meal, having their own personal chef, to having a personal driver, everything is curated. Workshops around some of the things we're talking about, workshops around your mental health, workshops around financial health and your wealth and your health, workshop around things that affect us as women. So nutrition, heart diseases, fibroids, all the things that impact us on a cellular, molecular, psychological,
yeah.
all those levels, things that we're not even aware of.
How important is diet?
Nutrition. We have, definitely.
What do
We
you think?
have workshops around nutrition. And when I
Stay
think
close,
of
stay close.
diet,
You gotta stay close.
yes.
Go ahead, say.
yeah,
Stay
get back
close.
to this mic.
Stay close.
When I think of diet, I don't think of the Western versions of diet, right?
Mhm.
There's a model I teach. It's called BACE, BACE. B is for the body. And that means, are you taking care of your physical health? Are you being nutritious? So what does your diet look like? Are you eating healthy? Right? And that doesn't mean one meal a day. It doesn't mean 20 meals a day, but are you eating balanced, nutritious meal that works for your body type, right? Your age, right? All of that, whatever your medical issues are. It involves rest. Are you resting enough? Not necessarily sleeping, right? Sleep is important, but there's a difference between sleep and rest. So are you doing all those things? Diet includes, are you drinking enough water, right? So yes, all those elements.
I think what we get to is when you talk about body,
Mm-hmm.
mind, spirit, that sweet spot, which is balance, homeostasis, and the need to achieve it, and I think that what we do suffer from is a lack of balance. And at any point, body can be thrown off, mind can be thrown off, spirit can be thrown off, and you're going to tell us about soul being thrown off too. But the bottom line is that when they're out of balance, they're out of balance. And I think as Africans living on this continent now, our circadian rhythm, our time clock has been distributed by going from Africa to here. Just my thought.
Absolutely. So balance and boundaries are important. So when I talk about the BACE model, that's what it's about. It's about, how do I bring these things in balance? So B, as I mentioned, is for the body. A is for activities, right? C is for connecting, and E is for enjoyment. All four of those needs to be in balance. If I'm just doing one and not doing the other three, I am going to be out of sync.
Got to work, right? This is homework. This is the homework. Folks, this is the homework. Yes. Get the homework.
So you have to have all four of those going on, because in doing those four things, you're also tapping into your natural neurotransmitters. Those are the things that people go on psychotropic meds to do. A lot of that you can do by just exercising, having connections with folks, healthy connections with folks, right? Enjoying life.
We're coming up on the holidays, and people are going to be doing libation and that kind of thing. I just want to piggyback off we just, as the data shows, there are more women with mental health challenges than men. At least that's because women go to the doctor more than
so
women.
Let's clarify that. It's not necessarily there's
asking.
More. But what I want to say about that, because I think that's an important thing, because I think people see those numbers and think, oh,
women are crazy.
Women. Right. But the difference is, women are historically, because I think more men are showing up now, historically, women are faster to seek these services. But not to get it, twisted, men have those. The difference is how it shows up. What you see is anger. What you see is more addictive behaviors in men. Right. Whereas some men tend to get, historically get diagnosed with anger issues or substance addiction, and women get diagnosed with depression. Right. But or anxiety. Yeah. But understanding that with trauma, right, it's going to show up behaviorally in different ways for different people. Right. And so for someone, with any kind of traumatic, historical, or current traumas, I may choose to deal with my traumas by numbing myself through addictions, right? Or I may choose to run away and hide through depressive, withdrawal, right?
Mhm.
And so the thing, it's going to show up. It's going to show up in a variety of ways. And again, back to the mind
Dysfunctional
body,
relationships.
dysfunctional relationship, unhealthy relationship with self. Bring it back to the diet. Look what Cindy mentioned. So unhealthy eating habits, sugar, emotional eating. Let's just call it emotional eating and leave it at that, right? Because we
Okay.
know that can come in a variety of different ways. So when we talk, going back to balance and mind, body, spirit, right, we have to remind ourselves that behaviorally, that's where the change is,
Mhm.
right? What are the choices that I'm making, right? Or emotions or feelings are valid. Something happens in my life and it's going to shift, it's going to shift how I view the world. It's going to shift how I view myself. It's going to shift how I view others. And at the same time, I also know that with support, right, with understanding, with compassion for myself, and with support from others, I can change that narrative.
I'm impressed. I think that this is in a nutshell what I've been trying to talk about for the last couple of years, and you make it so real clear. And so what you have to understand, the folks have been getting parts of this meal, and now you're giving them the full, enchilada. And there's no lack of information. Google, when you put in the search for mind, body, spirit, came out like 1.5 million on the search. And so there is a lot of information, a lot of folks providing information. And how do you separate the good from the bad? How do we get to a person like you again? This is www.walters.
Wellnessgroup.com.
Okay, so that's kind of like we're trying to bring proper, vetted information. But how do people make these decisions about the information and about whether it is like, something that could work for them or something that's probably invalid?
You mean how do they use information that they Google?
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. They tell you use egg ears and put a nail in your toe and all that kind of stuff, and it'll solve your stress, right?
The internet can be your best friends and it could be your worst enemy.
That's true,
right? And so one of the things I tell my patient all the time, I said, just be careful what source you're going to. All right, because we can go on and we can read and you'll get 20 different ways to manage or how to eat healthy or how to do this or how to do that. Have conversations with people who are in the know-how, right?
like you.
Check it out. Like me, check it out, or you,
Okay.
or Dr. Pearson over here, check it out, right? Check it out and make sure, because, I don't know how, I'm not a tech person. I don't know how they get all their information and how they gather it. Some information is good, right? Don't get me wrong, but you still want to research your resources. Go to the backstory.
Do your homework.
Do your homework, right?
Very important.
Yes.
Very important. Well, of course, as a PA, I have to kind of search stuff. And I was looking at, I was saying, how does the mind, body, spirit experience, connect to the African culture? And I searched GPT chat and said, this one says that in African American culture, the concepts of mind, body, and spirit are often interconnected and may be influenced by a variety of sources, religious traditions, historical experiences, and practices and perspectives. Here are some of the aspects of the connected between the mind, body, spirit, and the African culture. Tell me if you think you agree. It says religious and spiritual influence.
That religious and spiritual are influences of the mind, body, spirit. Yeah.
Okay. And what I'm trying to draw a path is a path of that. This is just who we are, and you can look at certain aspects of it and take it on, and why it works for you so much, because it has a cultural base in our culture, in our spirit, who we are. So this makes sense to most people of African descent because it sounds like something our ancestors would have told us.
Yeah, I think, and it's, again, if you look back to our ancestors and how they worshipped, right? It's it's in a variety of forms. We worship through dance, we worship through stories, we worship through songs. We tell stories about different gods and goddesses, right?
Yeah.
And so when we're looking at healing practices, how did we heal? Think of that. They were healing everything, right? They were addressing every part, every element of who we are, right? Somewhere along the line, we've kind of moved away from that. And that's why, as I mentioned before, I try to look at things from a holistic with a WHOLISTIC perspective, because I do feel that we have to bring some of those in from a cultural stance, right? From a spiritual, right? However you want to look at it, it has to, for me, and this is just my perspective, is that you cannot separate this piece and expect 3/4 is going to run on its own, right? If you want the full body experience, you have to tap into all those various parts: the mind, we think, we feel. When we think and we feel, it shows up someplace in our bodies in a physiological sense, right? When I think of something, I create a story based on that thought, right? Based on that thought and that story, I'm going to have some kind of feeling, right? And that feeling may be sadness, it may be anger, right? Based on that emotion, my body's going to react. If I'm angry, we do this, we tense, right? We get in our fight flight position, right? Or I may withdraw, right? So it's all connected here, and it can go in the reverse, right? I can have an experience, a physical experience. I see something, I feel something, I smell something, and immediately my body tenses up based on my history of trauma, right? That smell might remind me, that I hated my grandmother's cookies, right?
Which is a possibility.
Right. And, I tense up because I don't want to try it. And based on that, I have a feeling. So, it's a cycle.
And it gets me into thinking about Western medicine over the last 150 years, separating the mind from the body, from the spirit. And when you think about the Freudian and Jung discussions around hating your mother and loving your father and wanting to have sex with your brother, like, okay, all right, I got this. So
with your mama.
Yeah, and I guess the discussion has to be, how do we get from this Eurocentric kind of psychological manipulation to an African-centered discussion that allows us to heal?
I think the movement has started. I think not many people still subscribe to Freudian or Jungian theory. I mean, there's elements that I think are still important.
Like what? Like what?
Hey, we'll save that for another time. His work on dreams is not bad.
Boy,
Even though, yes. But
I
I'm not a Freudian.
Fanon.
I'm not let me just go on record to say I'm not a Freudian fan at all.
Yeah.
Even in terms of his developmental stages, I'd rather, Erickson developmental stages, I think, is way better, especially if we're looking at it from a cultural stance.
But I'm just basically, it's white men talking about white men. It's not white men talking about people. It's not white men talking about women. It's white men talking about white men's mental health. So that's where I take the issue with it. And white women, oh, don't hurt me, kind of thing.
Well, I think on a real note, though, I think you hit on a point, is that for Black folks having a more Afrocentric, which is where storytelling comes in, which is why
that's why I brought it up.
Stuff like for me, I think walking therapy is beautiful. Having people tell their narratives is a great thing, because if you're able to tell your story, right, and then understand why your story is the way it is, and then start looking at that story through a different lens in terms of, how is this story serving me right now? Yes, it's true, this did happen.
Which gets us to a discussion of resilience.
Exactly. This did happen. And the way it happened shaped me this way. So that's why I'm making certain choices right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then the question becomes, how are those choices working for you, for
Mhm.
me right now? Right. And just like I wrote that initial story, I can rewrite that story. Right. And I can change the elements.
Not the woke kind of story.
Not
right?
the woke.
Okay, we want to make sure we writing it right.
I can change the parts of the story that no longer serves me. When I talk with people, I talk with them what I call the, or what we call the elements of compassion for yourself.
Mhm.
There's 4 elements. The first one is wisdom, right? Wisdom says, guess what? There's elements, there's things that are the root of our suffering that were not our choice. They were never our choices. We did not cause them. We did not create them, but they shape who we are. That's part A of wisdom. Part
Okay.
B of wisdom said the world is not black and white, and we can make different choices, right? Because if it's not serving me, then I need to figure out how to shift that. I owe it to
Narrative, yeah.
exactly. I owe that to myself. That's my responsibility to me. It's not your responsibility. That's my responsibility, right?
Or to live in it with you.
Or to live in it with me, right?
Yeah.
But when I do it, I need to do it with kindness, right? I need to do it with kindness. I need to recognize that there's going to be things in my life that I have no control over, but I still want to live.
Mhm.
What choice do I make? I have to make a choice that's going to work for me, right? Radical acceptance, right? I have to make a choice. I don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with it. But if I want to survive in this context, I need to find a way to be okay. Doesn't mean I'm not going to try to change it, right? Depends on what it is,
Yes.
right? But if I allow it to dominate my thoughts, my mind, my experiences, then I'm going to lose.
I guess something just flashed across my mind in terms of that, and it take this for what it's worth. Sally Hemings
Mm.
and her relationship to Jefferson as the 3rd president of the United States. And there was a period where she could have ran, but didn't. And I always wonder why she didn't. Well, the story goes that she was told that if she went back to America, her children would be freed.
Mm.
So here's a person making a choice
Mm-hmm.
at a time when it could have been easier for her to have left the children and become free, but she wasn't that kind of mother,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of discussion around, I say, the mitochondria Eve and how women have protected their children throughout the centuries
Mm-hmm.
and want the best for them. So particularly women of color. So, I mean, as you were talking this about making choices and radical choices, I wonder what kind of choices she was having to make and how she thought as a woman that was a slave, that was the mistress for the 3rd president of the United States.
Mm.
Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, sometimes it's about survival, right? Sometimes we make difficult choices because in that moment, that's the only way I know how to survive.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And that's why I tell people, I don't believe in living with regrets, right? Every choice we make in that moment, given the information we have, given our coping strategies or skill sets or resiliency, that's the choice that was working for me in that moment. 5 minutes later, a month later, a year later, given a new set of information, given a new set of tools, a new set of skills, will I make a different decision? I don't know.
It depends.
It depends, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. And so, and that's why I try to not be judgmental, or be judgy, because you don't know what
The other person's experience.
Exactly. And when we're talking about, if we connect this back to trauma and traumatic experiences, if my internal working model, meaning how things were reflected back to me at an early age, how it was modeled, how I deal with people, with conflict, with relationships, with my own self, and I don't have a good working model, I'm going to make it up on the fly, right? Because in this moment, I have to survive, right? And until that person, me, we, us have different set of tools, right? That says, you know what? The way you've been doing this, while it worked back then, it's not necessarily working right now.
How do you know that you're stuck in your trauma loop?
Same choices, same results.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the movie The Three Stooges, or the show, the TV show?
Of course.
Okay. Do you remember, some of the episodes? Was it Curly?
I tell you.
And he would run into the wall.
Yeah. I was thinking more of Tom Cruise, where he was a soldier, and every time he was in the war, he get thrown into this loop. It was the same loop he was coming out. He get thrown into the same loop he keep coming out.
I haven't seen that one, but
okay.
If that's the case, that's basically what it is. If I'm making the same choices and it's yielding the same results,
that's insanity.
Insanity. It means I'm stuck. Somewhere I'm stuck. The problem, though, is I may not know it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I may not know that.
Do you think a lot of people don't know they're stuck in a trauma model?
I think a lot of people don't, because remember, we operate more in the unconscious than we do in the conscious.
This is true.
Right? And so
this is really good. I mean, this is a really great conversation. I want to thank you right now, because this is what people need to move into 2024.
Mm-hmm.
We went through COVID. I went through job change. I went through, death. And so this is kind of like a remaking and a retooling. I want to thank you for coming. There are no God doesn't make mistakes.
No.
So me going into that shop to get my hair appointment, I still didn't get the hair appointment, but I got something better. God had something better for me.
That's right.
So
God is good all the time.
all day.
All the time, God is good. And I'm a believer that nothing happens before its time, and everything happens, reasons and seasons, right?
Yes, it's true.
Everything happened for a reason and in its season. And that's when we were meant to connect.
Yeah.
And that's how we were meant. Because I was not supposed to be there at that time either.
I'm saying and so what I want folks to understand is too often Black people get it twisted. And too often, being friendly or being loving or being understanding is mistaken in our community. And I want to say that that's what we have to work on. Mm-hmm. Everybody's not trying to do you. Everybody don't want to have sex with you. Everybody don't want to, whatever it is, but if you're functioning on that level, then you need to change, because you're blocking your blessing.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. There's, I operate from the lens of compassion. Okay. Right. And in everything that I do, classes, individual sessions, retreats, everything is based on that element of compassion. Mm-hmm. Understanding, though, that compassion also comes with compassionate intention and compassionate behavior. Compassionate behavior basically means I'm still going to hold you accountable for how you're showing up. I'm just not going to slam you. I'm not going to belittle you. I'm not going to make you feel lesser than. Right. I'm going to encourage you to be responsible and take ownership for your behaviors in a kind, gentle way, by helping you understand why certain behaviors and or choices are not okay. Mm-hmm. Right. So we can still hold people accountable and still be compassionate with it.
I got to say, I'm laughing. I'm thinking, you're in the chair with Makita and you're getting your hair done. And then I come in talking to him. Who is this brother? He's just like, okay, blowing out my ear. And it's going to be like, okay. Well, I can't do this and I can't do this, sister, but you told me to look good, though. And I kind of, all right, okay, over here. So I always say it's always intentional, and I think that I want to be very, I called you queen, and that's what I meant. I consider to believe all the women of color that I know are queens. Yes. And they deserve that station. Yes. And, and
which, by the way, was our theme for 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. I do themes for the women's retreat.
Oh, okay.
So, I shine bright like a diamond. I'm love. I'm queen. It's all about me. Okay. So yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
It's yes.
Yeah, I'm loving that. So I mean, it's just kind of like, and I hadn't had a lot of guests on this year because it just wasn't right,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever things like this happen, you know, it's kind of like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. And I want to say that it's been as advertised. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very impressed with your base and your knowledge. And I encourage people to look at her website and encourage people to get a hold of her and contact her, particularly women who want to do that retreat piece where they can get some, you know, the whole enchilada minus the enchilada, right?
Yes.
So,
And I will say, if you even if you can't do the retreat in Jamaica, by the way, I don't think I said this, it's actually in Jamaica.
oh,
But there's also a 1-day retreat that gets you, and this connects to the theme mind, body, spirit, that
Mhm.
gets you out of your mind. It's a 1-day restorative retreat where we do nothing but movements. So we do yoga, we do meditation, we do journaling, we do sound bath, and we do dance.
how uncomfortable are Black women with following what is like just healthy behaviors that maybe they hadn't internalized, but you kind of like got it in a package form, do this, but it's not scripted. It's kind of like it's an individualized
Mhm.
piece. But the bottom is, again, one of the things I continue to echo, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
Exactly.
And so how hard is that for women of color? And I played a amount of trauma. I
It
played a
is.
amount of 16, 19. I played a amount of
Mhm.
you know, of
Mhm.
abuse, rape, you know, all that stuff.
Mhm. It is. I think initially it's very hard. I think for Black women and women of color to internalize that they are important, because that's what it boils down to, right?
Mhm.
Is you are important, you are special, right? You are queen.
Mhm.
And because you are a queen, you need to be treated as such. However, you can't be treated as such unless you show people how, right, to treat you as such and make them. So this is where boundaries comes in, right? Is you are going to treat me with respect. You're going to treat me the way I deserve to be treated, the queen that I am, and helping them understand that that is their right. That is your part of your bill of rights, is to be loved. To, you know, you deserve to be loved. You are loved, right? And for that to happen, they have to understand that it begins with self, right? I have to love me enough to show you how to love me.
The difference between that and entitlement.
Exactly. This is not, and that's why I said self care is never equal selfishness, because there's an internalized monologue that we have as women where if I stop and take a nap, if I tell you no, I can't take you to the store, or I don't want to do this, I'm being selfish, because that's what's been passed down consciously and unconsciously through generations, that you're supposed to work yourself to the bone. And so now, fast forward, when these women are trying to say, I'm tired, I don't want to, the record that gets played is, you know what, you can, you're just being selfish. And sometimes they're actually being told that you're just being selfish right now, you don't think about anyone but yourself. And so the idea of helping them to move beyond that, is to help them to understand that, one, let's debunk the myth of the strong Black woman. I do not
You
subscribe.
just hit it.
I do not
Wait, let
subscribe.
me see what I say. I
Mm-mm.
said I want you strong, but I don't want you super.
Yeah. I changed that
Okay.
too. And the people I work with know that we don't do that. I said the whole Black woman. As a whole, WHOLE, Black woman,
Mhm.
it means that I have good boundaries. I know how to pick you up when you're falling down, but I also know when to let you stand on your own, and I know when to pick myself up before I fall down, right? So I know when to give and when to say, I love you, but I can't.
Oh, okay.
Right? That's the
And
whole
you
Black
have
woman.
permission to do that. You have a
Exactly.
permission to say no.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the whole Black woman, because when we subscribe to the strong Black woman, we're subscribing to this historical woman who is doing for everyone but herself. And when she attempts to do things for herself, she's walking around with shame, she's walking around with guilt, she's walking around, quote unquote, broken.
Mhm.
And so if we are able to shift that narrative to say, no, I'm a whole woman, and because I'm a whole woman, I know who I am, and because I love me, and I love me with, and I love you, right?
Mhm.
I can do both.
So the
But
super Black women don't even exist in your universe.
Nope, nope, no. If she's whole, She's able to do all these things and care for self.
That's
But
good.
recognize that if I don't care for this, I can't care for you.
It's true.
Right?
It's true.
All right.
You do a lot of yoga, a lot of meditation, and we're gonna do some breathing. We're at 4:49. Boy, the time sure has
Whoa,
passed.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I want to again thank you for coming on. I want to thank Believe Radio and Animology for coming down and opening up the spot. Curtis, have a good time making some money in San Francisco. I want to again just give a lineage thing to all the African American physicians I, as a PA, have known and has worked with me, and I point you in that same lineage of folks that are making a difference. I only commend you, and I'm glad that we were able to act as, I said, a vocal forum for a lot of the ideas that I think should be mainstream. In this whole process for you, what has been some of the most challenging things that you've had to deal with in terms of, getting people to kind of look in, that direction versus the direction that they've been following?
Some of kind of what we've talked about, just people get in their own way, fear, cultural fear, societal fear, systemic, issues that tells you you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you shouldn't, you couldn't, you can't.
Okay.
Right. But more importantly, because again, I do hold people accountable. I'm one of those people that I will hold you accountable. At the end of the day, you getting in your own way.
Okay.
And so one of the biggest challenge is to help people get beyond that you are worthy. You are loved. You deserve to be loved. That's a hard sell for some people, again, because their schemas are such where to hear that freaks them out. It frightens them for someone to say you are loved or you deserve to be loved. When their schema says, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough.
And they act like that too.
And they act like that because that's, because that schema, remember that schema is deep. The schema is that strong sense, that belief that, sometimes have been molded and solidified based on our experiences.
So
right?
Why is it so hard, I mean, myself included, to move on from the trauma?
Because it's familiar.
Yeah.
It's safe. Right? We when we talk about trauma, we talk about the different parts of selves, right? We have, sometimes we call it the wounded child or the exile, right? That's that part of us that experienced the trauma, the traumatic experiences, whatever that looked like, right? Then we have the adaptive child or the managers or the firefighters. Those are the ones that protect, that comes out, and so they're the ones that say, okay, we're going to dissociate so that we don't have to feel or think. We're going to smoke or we're going to drink to numb, right? So they're the protectors of the exile and the wounded child, right? And those are the ones that gets us to where we are. So those are a couple parts. But then the part that I want to work with and I want to bring out is what we call the adult self, right? That's that person that operates from that wise mind I talk about, from that wisdom. That's that person that is able to say with compassion, guess what, Dr. P? You're handsome. You're loved. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be here. You are here. And guess what? We can do this. We can change our narrative moving forward. That's that person that says, yes, it's true. We've been hurt. We've been tortured. We've been whatever. Right? And that's why we are making these choices today. But guess what? What if we were to change those choices? Right? What can we do look, if we work together? What can we do? Look at how far you got us with what little you had. Now let's shift this. Right? Understanding that the person I am yesterday is not who I am today.
Okay.
And the person I am today, based on my choices, will not be the person tomorrow. But I have to actively make those choices. But when I do it, I need to do it with kindness. Earlier I mentioned the compassion itself. Warmth is one of the elements, right? Is I have to do it with kindness.
Mhm.
I can't be a bully because if I'm a bully, then guess what? That trauma part, because the brain works based on habits, right? And those, the adaptive manager firefighter is very strong. And if I try to bully them into change, they're just going to look at me like I'm crazy. They're not
Yeah.
going to budge.
So I think that from a summation standpoint, it behavioral change is the hardest change to make.
Behavioral changes, it's difficult to make, and it is
Yeah.
doable.
Oh yeah.
Right?
I think that's what we're talking about here,
Yes.
and what we are putting out in 2024,
Mhm.
vis-a-vis UDOC and the show, is that we need to be able to change, or we'll be changed by the change.
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
that's a organizational behavior concept, one of the
mhm,
degrees I ever
mhm.
said. But
NDRE said the only thing constant in this world is change.
this is
Right.
true. This is true.
Right. Change is always happening. It's how we embrace the change that's important. Right. We need to stop. We need to reflect. Well, we need to first breathe. Right. We need to reflect, and then we need to choose. So stop, breathe, reflect, and choose, knowing that we cannot change what we're not aware of. We cannot change what we have not accepted is not working. And when we make those changes, we need to make those changes with compassion, not with hurtful words. Suck it up and get over it. Doesn't work. Right.
I wanted to read something off her website, and it's her base. It says basic holistic approach to help individuals facing emotional and mental challenges to transform their relationships and embrace radical self-acceptance
Mhm.
through compassionate coaching and group courses, personalized support, and I say look at the website, please, folks. And she said a whole bunch of stuff going on, and we promised that in the last 3 minutes we're going to do a similar breathing exercise. But I wanted her, as a beginning, as I've done in the past in my shows, and in a range of maybe 3 minutes, right? Give her the final word. Doc, it's been just a great time having you on.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to this breathing exercise as we close the show out. But I wanted you to bring up some of your key points and the recipe for change, behavioral change.
Mhm. So I think having healthy boundaries, creating balance in your life, making self priority, meaning having an active, healthy self care practice that includes physical, spiritual, mental health, as well as financial wealth, is extremely important because stress will kill. It does kill, it has killed, and will continue to kill. So if you understand who you are as a person and that the choices we make dictate our future, stop, breathe, reflect, and choose. And when you choose, do so with compassion for yourself. Love you. And if you are able to love you, you'll be able to extend that love to others around you.
I want to say thank you, everybody. Have a great 2024. Miss Howard will be in the new year, I think. I want to thank our guest for coming on, and she's going to lead us in a breathing exercise. So here we go.
Okay, so this is just a quick 3-minute activity to kind of introduce you to mindfulness practices that you can just practice in your day to day. Okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to lead you through or talk to you about the 3 basic steps that's involved, and then I'll actually take you through the activity. So one of the first step is awareness. Okay, what you want to be able to do is, as you're doing this on a day to day, is you want to be able to just check in with yourself. Where am I? Who am I? How am I doing? Okay. What on earth am I thinking right now? Okay. And what this does is it allows you to shift your habits and become more present focused. Remember, we have to be present focused to make changes. The next step is I want you to be able to focus on your breathing and basically just shifting your attention to your breath. Third step is expansion. So this is where we shift the breathing to the entire body. This allows you to observe what's happening on a physiological level. What are the body sensations that I'm having? Okay. So now I want you, if you're seated and you're comfortable, please close your eyes or just find a spot that you can just focus on, relaxing your face. It sometimes helps to just give yourself a gentle smile. For those who may be out and about listening, if you're walking, just pay attention to your surrounding. Feel and notice the ground under your feet. And as you start to notice, I want you to gently focus on your breathing. And as you breathe, allow the air to pass through your nose and out through your mouth. Notice the rise and fall of your diaphragm with each breath as you inhale and exhale. I invite you now to link up with your breath, finding that pace that works for you. For some, you may need to speed it up. For others, you may need to just slow it down a bit. But find that rhythm that is soothing and calming for you. Now, just check in with yourself. How am I doing right now in this moment? Notice any thoughts, any feelings, or any physical sensations you might be having. What are you feeling in your body? Just allow it to be felt in that moment. And with compassion, embrace that feeling, reminding yourself that it's okay. It's okay to feel whatever it is that I am feeling right now. Now, let's ground yourself in the moment by paying attention to whatever is happening to your body. For those who are seated, just notice the weight of your body in the chair, allowing yourself to be felt, to be held and supported. Notice your body coming to rest in the present moment. If you're standing or walking, just notice the weight in your legs as you plant them on the ground, feeling connected to the earth, coming to rest in the present moment. Remember that our mind is alive, and because it's alive, it will wander. And it's perfectly okay for it to do so. Just notice what is happening, where it's going, where it's gone, and just gently guide your attention back to your awareness of your body and to your breath. Continue to notice the breath moving through your entire body. And with every breath, notice your body becoming more and more relaxed. And with each out breath, I invite you to focus on the word relax. We will end by taking a deeper breath, moving the body around a little. Just notice how it feels. Your body's grateful. Just notice what's happening. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Welcome back, and just continue on with your day.
I want to say thank you to everyone. Doc, thank you. We look forward to more collaborations, and maybe you need to get a show. I want to thank the whole community for listening to us and sharing with us, and look forward to more shows like this in 2024. Doc, any final words?
Oh, not really. Just thank you for having me on. This was great. I look forward to doing more. And for folks out there, just please remember the holidays here. Be safe as we go into the holidays. What is my self care plan? What do I plan to do for myself today? One day at a time, one step at a time, one moment at a time. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves all we need to do is to be here right now. Because again, the choice I make now will dictate what happens tomorrow. So let's just be.
Thank you, Doc. We'll see you next year. Have a great new year, please.
Thank you, and
Bye-bye.
you as well. Bye bye.